I read a while back about an idea that Mr. Barrett may have had synesthesia. Now, there's all kinds of sorts of claims about Mr. Barrett having schizophrenia and synesthesia and all kinds of weird mental things. And as I did in Peeling Syd Barrett and Did Syd Barrett, I've tried to flesh out the individual and eliminate certain things as far as I can to be fair to the individual and to discuss the work, which is what I think people should be doing, instead of discussing kind of hearsay and making secondary assessments of other people. Now, whether or not Mr. Barrett had schizophrenia, I have no idea, and neither does anyone else. And whether or not Mr. Barrett has or had synesthesia, I have no idea, and neither does anyone else. It's simply an idea that is either worth discussing and trying to review as much as we can, or it's just better left alone. I don't know which. But there is a song that made me consider the possibility. Now, if you're familiar with the work that I put together on Peeling Syd Barrett and Did Syd Barrett, I tried to break down the power of his lyrics, and it became quite apparent to me that Mr. Barrett is a genius with words. He is a poet, an absolute poet, there's no doubt in my mind. So when I came across the song Jug Band Blues, which is a song I like, there are three colors that are mentioned in that song, and one of them is very specifically tied to a sound. And I'll just kind of play it for you here real quick. He sings, "Brought me here instead, dressed in red." And that red is very bright in that chord, and I thought to myself, that sounds really red. Red. And that's red, that's the fourth string there on an A chord. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to it, I'll check it out. And that's what this video is really about, is I wanted to go through the colors of 10 songs. 10 seemed like a good number. Unfortunately, in my opinion, not all of the songs have a really tight connection between colors and a specific chord. Often a single chord will be played with various notes for various colors. Sometimes the notes will shift. He'll shift notes on a color. Sometimes there doesn't seem to be an association with the color in a sound. But quite often, in my estimate, there is enough there that we can at least look to see if there's some kind of pattern going on. If there is a pattern, it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, mean that he did have synesthesia. It just means that he might have had something like that. He may have had something that was an association between sound and color. And I wouldn't be surprised, because that's in a lot of us already. I mean, the blues, right? You sing the blues, there's an association with the color blue for a reason. And there's a reason that the color blue is associated with kind of being down. That's in a lot of people already, on some level. But there may be something more complicated going on with Mr. Barrett. I think he can be a very complicated individual. And this is something that's kind of worth looking at. In my opinion, it's what I wanted to kind of look at, and I thought I'd share it with you, and these thoughts with you. And if you're interested in the topic of synesthesia or music or Mr. Barrett, hopefully this is something that you will enjoy. So let's go ahead and take a look. We'll look at the very first song. Now, the first song is Jug Band Blues. That's the first one that came to me. As part of this kind of internal discussion I was having on this topic for a while. Now, as I mentioned before, brought me here instead, dressed in red. Now that particular note, that's an A chord, and it's the fourth string. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is standard tuning on a guitar, so that is a G string, and that is an A note because it's the second fret, so G, G sharp, A. Counting up from open. So that's an A note, A chord, A note. Let's just make a note of that, and I'll kind of compile these in conclusions at the end of the episode. At least that's what I hope to do. Now, there are other colors in this song, as I mentioned. I don't feel the correlation is quite as strong, but they're still worth mentioning. So, it's awfully considerate of you to think of me here. That's kind of how the song. And I never knew a moon could be so big, and I never knew a moon could be so blue. So right there we have blue. Blue. Moon could be so blue. So blue. Right there we're on the third string of an A minor to C transition. So C/CG. I like the CG for this song. I like to go CG to A minor. Never knew a moon could be so big, and I never knew a moon could be so blue. Blue. Third string here. This is the D string, so we're actually looking at an E note. So I'll just kind of make a note of that. We're on an A minor chord, and we're playing an E note for blue in this case. Now again, blue, direct kind of correlation between a sound and a color. Now the other color that's kind of mentioned is the C not being green. So the C isn't green. C isn't green. A minor to CG, or just A minor to C if you want to play it that way. But C isn't green. Again, third string green. In this case, same as an A minor. So third string E, A, D string, second fret, so an E again. So we've used the E note on the third string for both blue, and green, although the chords are a little bit different. What's interesting to me here, that I'll just kind of give you as an aside, is that he specifically just stated there that the C isn't green. Well, what is the C? Is it blue? It's not really blue. The C is blue-green. It is aqua. It is an aqua color. It is blue-green. And it's interesting to me that Mr. Barrett here uses exactly the same note for blue and green, almost as if he's mixing the color blue and green and holding it tight to a singular note to show a singularity, a single idea of mixed blue and green. Just a passing thought, but it really is beautiful. I mean, if he's doing that on purpose, man, that's really, really wonderful. Anyway, it's definitely worth sharing that if a person is capable of doing something that complicated in such a simple fashion, it really, really is wonderful. So the next song, as I mentioned, I'm just going to compile these and we'll do a conclusions at the end of the episode. Now, the next song is Terrapin, which is one of Mr. Barrett's solo songs. So, I really love you, and I mean you. That's kind of how it starts out. So, crystal blue, you can hear right there. Now he's using bar chords, or I suspect he's using bar chords anyway. That's the easiest way to transition between these in this song. So, crystal blue. Now, again, I'll just point out to you that he's not discussing blue here. He's discussing crystal blue. It's very wonderful to me that Mr. Barrett is constantly using modifiers to colors to clarify the different types of colors. It's a poetic way of speaking, but it also may be indicating variations of color. If there is a pattern to this, then that would be a variation of color, not just blue, but crystal blue. Crystal blue. Anyway, this bar chord is at the 5th fret, which makes it an A. So I just switched to a standard A now. A, blue, and you can hear blue, blue. This is on the 4th string, again standard tuning. So that's the G string. So second fret of the G string is an A. So let's just make a note. There's an A note on an A chord for an E. Okay? That's pretty much the only color in terrapin. Now, these associations, in my opinion, are fairly strong. And the reason for that is because there's kind of a singular sound tied to a singular idea or color. Later on, this won't necessarily be the case. We'll see transitions between things like D to A minor, or D to A, or D to C, and those are both used for a singular color. So it's kind of hard to associate a singular sound to that one color, as we're doing now. This will kind of give you an indicator of what I'm talking about. I'm going to look at the song Arnold Lane, and you'll see it almost immediately. The song goes, distorted view, see through, baby blue. Now if you notice there, he goes blue. It transitions from a D to an E on the color blue. So now it's really hard to kind of associate a singular sound with a chord. Of course, there are some other interesting things kind of going on there, but let's look at what are the two chords and possible notes that are associated with the color blue in this case. So let's go ahead and take a look at the two chords then that are being used in this song. Again, distorted view, see through, baby blue. Now the D chord, which starts the blue, blue, and it finishes on the E chord, so the blue. Now if you actually break this down by note, blue, and there it is right there, it's the last blue. It's actually harmonic, blue. Now this is the last string, so this is the E string, the high E string, so E, F, F sharp. It's using an F sharp note for some reason. Blue. This is a little bit off because if there is consistency, the blue in the E chord, which follows, is on the third string, second fret. So D, D sharp, E. This is an E note, so blue. If we actually wanted the E note on the high string, we would just use the open. So I'll show you what that sounds like. Blue, and this is a harmonic now. Blue. So if we wanted consistency in blue, we would use the E that's on the third string here with the open E on the high sixth string. That's harmonic. But he's not doing that for some reason. He's transitioning from off, which is kind of a jazzy thing to do. Blue. It's a little bit strange, and perhaps that's the point of that all. Of course, this is a song about someone who is considered to be strange by many people, or would be. So maybe that's the nature of the blue, and of course blue is often associated with boys. So maybe perhaps in a sonic or musical way, this is expressing the idea of someone who's a little bit off, transitioning to true blue. I don't know if that's going on, but it sure would be interesting. Now here's the way it's actually played. This is the F sharp together with the E. And you can see they don't really, they're not harmonics, but the other is. Now if you just want blue, and then if I play the D without the high string, so I'm just playing the other two notes of the D with an open blue, you can hear it harmonizing now. Blue. So I'm just playing a standard E there, and then a D note without the sixth string, with the sixth string in the open position instead of playing it with the F sharp in it. You can hear it harmonizing. She's saying if it's a, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but if you wanted to have a consistency in sound, then that D is kind of jazzy. It's a little bit off. Maybe that's the point. Okay, then let's move on to the next song. The next song I want to take a look at is Flaming. Now, Flaming I've chosen because of fairly early on it references the same color blue, and you would think maybe that Pink Floyd would refer mostly to reds and pinks, but actually most of the color references are to blue, which kind of makes sense in a way, I guess, because it's rock and roll and blues, etc. But we do seem to have a lot of references specifically to the color blue that aren't really being tied to music blues or actually being down. Usually these references to blue seem to be referencing the idea of blue tied to maybe boy. Anyway, just a side thought. So let's look at the song and see kind of how it goes. Alone in the clouds of blue. Now this is a D chord, and I'm on the third string, which is open. So blue, you can hear it there, blue. Now this is an open D string, third string, so this is just a D note, which is new so far. But if you notice, clouds of blue, so it goes alone in the clouds of blue. This isn't a singular reference of a chord to a singular word. It's actually clouds of blue, numerous words tied to a singular chord. But still, we'll keep track of it and come back to all these at the end. Now, what is interesting to me is if you get to the end, so alone in the clouds of blue. But I can you. So there we have our there we have our rhyme. Our rhyme is actually clouds of blue together with I can you. So blue you. Now let's look at the U here. That's an E chord, and U is the third string. Now the third string on the E chord is again repetitive. We've seen this before. This is E A D, D sharp E. This is an E note. So again, although it's not a direct tie to the word blue, it is tied through the rhyme at the end of this verse. U is tied to blue, and it's a very subtle shift because we have an open blue, which transitions just like Arnold Lane did to blue, blue, blue. In the same way that we were looking at a transition of blue with two notes, we see the same thing kind of here, although here it's a D to an E. Okay, let's take a look at Astronomy Domine, and I'm sorry I have a lot of breaks in here, but I'm sick. Been sick for quite a while now, so I'm still trying to get over that, and normally, of course, I don't like to have a lot of edits, I just like to talk through these things, but anyway, please forgive me. So let's look at Astronomy Domine. Now, this is a really odd song, and it, well, you'll see how complicated it gets, but in the very beginning, there's an E5 note that's being played. And it goes along with the first lines in a very monotonous or monotone fashion. So, lime and limpid green, a second scene, a fight between the blue, you. And then they switch to this once new. Now, these are all plucking, so I don't really like these, but I will say this. The E5 and then this D5 kind of chord, it's used for once new. If you notice, there's two colors being discussed. One is this really basic blues chord of an E. This is one of the first ones you learn as a blues player. This is actually kind of a power E that's used by blues players. Is being used for lime and limpid green, and of course lime is a kind of a green, and so is limpid green. But it's also used for the blue. Blue. So lime and limpid green, a second scene, a fight between the blue you. Now the next portion here is kind of a D5, is once new. What's interesting to me is that this portion of that D5 is also part of an E. So we still are using these, but also using them both for green and blue. Now this bass E is on the A, so A sharp, and then B, so that's a B right there. I don't really like that, but a B is still kind of in the key of A, so I guess key of E, sorry, so it still kind of makes sense. And then for the blue, that would also apply. What seems more applicable to me is later in the song when they go up in register, and they sing the verse. I'm in limpid green, the sun resounds around the icy waters under. I'm in limpid green, the sounds around the icy waters underground. Okay, so let's see. What's noteworthy here is that this lime and limpid green, although those are different chords, D and D minor, it sounds quite different, but the monotone of the note is consistent, which is funny because he's discussing two colors, lime green and limpid green. Lime and limpid green, the sound resounds around. But the note is not changing, and the reason the note is not changing is because it's the same for both chords. It's the fifth string, which is a B string, so B, C, C sharp, D. This is a D note, and that is not changing. So, lime and limpid green, the sound resounds around. You can hear it there, and of course, lime and limpid green, the sound resounds around the icy waters underground. So we have a D consistently used there for green. Let's make a note of both of these and keep going. Okay, let's go ahead then and attack the Scarecrow, which is a very strange rhythm song, and I will argue that this and Matilda Mother kind of prove a lot of early Syd Barrett's ability. This song I cannot play in its entirety. The rhythm is extremely difficult, and the chords of Matilda Mother are extremely difficult. So I think anyone who says that Syd Barrett couldn't really play guitar, they don't know what they're talking about. Just my opinion. They haven't done their homework. So let's look at this here. Black and green scarecrow, as everyone knows. Very interesting. I don't really know how to play it in his rhythm. I'm just kind of strumming it out. But black and green, there's our two colors, black and green. Black and green, both on the D chord. And the black, you can hear in the fifth string, black and green scarecrow. Again, this is kind of a weak connection, I guess you would say, because it's not a single chord tied to a single color. It's interesting, or noteworthy at least to me, that I'm seeing green mixed with another color here. And of course, green is a very flexible color for the human eye. So green mixed with blue has been done before, and now we see black mixed with green here. And of course, these are the colors that are worn by the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. So I did Syd Barrett, Wizard of Oz. You can watch that if you so choose. I'll link it in the description. At any rate, black and green scarecrow, as everyone knows. What a wonderful rhythm. And the rhythm gets even stranger as the song goes on. It's just genius. Anyway, so the black is a fifth string. This is on the B chord, so B, B, C, C sharp, D. That's a D note on the black, and then green, black and green, green. There's the green. That is on the fourth string, so G string. So we go G sharp, A. That's an A note on the green. So let's just go ahead and make a note of those two and keep on going. Now, as I mentioned, Matilda Mother is really difficult, and I'm not going to try and play it. I will only allude to the idea that Silver and Scarlet are both in here. B sus4 to A sus2 on the Silver. It's mentioned twice, so it's not a consistent chord. And the Scarlet is on the G6, but where it's at on the G6, I don't feel comfortable calling out. So again, a very difficult song, and I'm not going to get into that. That won't be part of our counting, but I did want to mention the colors there. Maybe someone else can mess with it. Okay, so let's go ahead then and take a look at Baby Lemonade. There's words connecting to colors one time. In this case, it's the line that rain is falling in gray far away. A beautiful sentiment, and this song, I guess you could say lemon itself is yellow, so maybe there's a yellow reference going on, but I'm just going to focus on the gray. Pardon me. Again, a fairly weak connection because it's a rain falls in gray far away. So we have rain falls in gray far away. Rain falls in gray far away. The gray is that's just a constant D chord being played. So rain falls in gray. Rain falls in gray, gray, gray. There it is. It's the fifth string again on the D chord, which we've discussed many times. The fifth string on the D chord. That's the B string. So B, C, C sharp, D, D note. Let's keep going. Let's look at the next song, The Gnome. And in this song, there are 2 or 3 colors, I guess you could say. So, he wore a scarlet tunic, a blue-green hood, and a white hood. So, of course, there's the he wore a scarlet tunic, scarlet. Now that scarlet is an A chord, and scarlet, he wore a scarlet, scarlet. And in that case, that's the 3rd string. That's a D. That's the D string, and I'm on the A chord, so 2nd fret. So D, D sharp, E. So that's an E note. So let's make a note of that. Scarlet, which is of course a form of red. And again, we're using the A chord and the E note. Now the next part is a little bit harder, of course, because a blue-green hood. Now, again, as we mentioned in Jug Band Blues, he seems to be combining the ideas of blue and green, which would be aqua, right? In this case, blue-green hood. Now the blue-green, those are both on the C chord to A chord. Blue-green hood. Now, for the C, I hear 2 different things. I hear a 5th blue, blue, green, blue, green. So 2nd blue, green hood. Now the blue is the blue I hear on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. This makes it a C note. And the 5th string, which sounds like a harmonic, blue, green, which sounds like a harmonic, is the 1st fret of the B string, or the 5th string, in which case it would be a C note. So we're basically harmonizing on C notes, and you can hear it when you let them ring out. Blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, hood, it look quite good. Blue, green. I don't know if you can hear that. Hopefully you can, but at any rate, he seems to be harmonizing on a C note. Okay, let's make a note of that and move on. We have 2 more songs to go. Now for the next one is Apples and Oranges. Now, apples and oranges, of course, apples and oranges. Orange is a color, but he seems to be discussing the fruit here. I guess we could kind of discuss the apples and oranges thing, but the truth is, there's never going to be another oranges kind of used, because oranges is such a difficult and orange, the color, are such difficult things to rhyme with. He never uses them again, so I can't establish a pattern. So I'm kind of ignoring the orange as part of this. What I'm really interested in this specific song is the use of the color pink. So, and I catch you by the eye, catch you by the eye, and I have to stop and think what a funny thing to do, cause I'm feeling rather pink. Now that pink variation is not a really strong singular association with a note, but it is a chord. And pink is a variation of red, and what do you know, we're using the A chord again. Now he uses so many notes in there, I'm not going to call them out individually, but E note, A note, C sharp note, and an E note. Essentially he's using the entire A chord. It is interesting also, if you will notice, that apples and oranges are red and orange, and if you mix those colors, what do you get? Well, you can get a form of pink, or a lighter red anyway, if you're a painter. So let's move on then. We'll just kind of make a note of that, and we're going to finish up with one of his greatest songs, in my opinion, which is the song called Opal. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up then. We're going to finish with what I think is one of Mr. Barrett's most beautiful and haunting songs, a song called Opal. And we're going to deal with two colors here, ebony, which is of course a form of black, and gray. Luckily for us, these are both in the first verse, so this shouldn't take too long, although it is a little bit complicated because he's harmonizing and using a lot of variations for these. So let's just go ahead and look at it. The song kind of starts out with an A. On a distant shore, miles from land, stands the ebony totem, an ebony sand. It has this reverberation. It's absolutely wonderful. It's just beautiful. So let's look at ebony first. The first ebony, ebony totem. Now very clearly the ebony on the G chord. This is a G chord. This is the third string. So ebony, ebony totem. Now I hear something else happening there, but I can't quite figure it out. Ebony, ebony, ebony totem. It may be the fifth string there, but let's just focus on the third. So the third open is the D string open, so that's obviously a D note. Ebony totem, and ebony sand. Now that sand, it has a wonderful vibration to it. So again now, ebony open on the third string, ebony sand, ebony sand. So the second ebony is open again on the third, that's a D again. It sounds to me like the last part, the E, ebony sand. He's messing with the sixth string. In this case, this would be the high E. So E, F, F, F sharp, ebony, and then the sand is the fifth string, third fret, which is a D note. So we go from an open D up to an F sharp, back to a D. I'll play together those three strings. Ebony sand. It sounds really great. Ebony sand. And then a dream in a mist of gray. Gray. Gray in this case is a very simple gray. It's the second string, the A string. So second fret of the A string, so A, A sharp, B, this is a B. So let's make a note of those. Let's compile everything we've got. Let's make some conclusions, see if we see any patterns. Again, perhaps it's an indicator of synesthesia, or perhaps there's some other underlying pattern going on. It's very difficult to know. But at least now we have information, and if someone was to say, did Mr. Barrett have synesthesia? We can at least now make an informed statement of no, possibly yes, maybe, or definitely yes. Up to you which one you want to say at the end of this, but for for me personally already, I can tell I'm leaning towards possible. So let's see what we got. Okay, let's just go ahead and look at what we've got. Now for blue, I have a CG chord with an E note, an A chord with an A note, an E chord with F sharp to E note, a D chord by 2, and E, a C with an E note, and I just want to point out that these are all in the key of E. So there is variation there in the color blue, but these are all pretty much found within the key of E. A pattern of sorts, I guess you could say, all very common though, but still possibly noteworthy. Now the red mentions have an A chord with an A note, an A chord with an E note, and in pink, the A chord with every note in the A chord. So right there we have a very tight correlation with the color red and the chord pink, and the chord A, which I think is quite noteworthy as well. Now green is kind of all over the place. I have a CG with an E note for C, a D and a D minor with D notes, B note at the beginning. I also have a D chord with A and F notes in it, and then finally a C chord with a C note in it. And I don't really see a whole lot of correlation there. Now, as I mentioned, Mr. Barrett doesn't really use just pure green. A lot of times he's discussing variations of green, which is fairly interesting, of course, because the human eye has most receptors for the color green. So people can note very subtle variations of green. I don't know, just as kind of a side thought. Now for the color black and ebony, which we associated with black, I have a D chord with a D note, and then ebony I have G and D chords with D and B notes. This seems to indicate a kind of proclivity for the D chord and the D note for the color black. Now for gray, I have a D chord with a D note and also an E chord with a B note. Not really a whole lot to go on there, but it is interesting, or noteworthy to me at least, that gray, which is associated with black, is also using the D chord and the D note. So key for E, key of E for blue seems to be fairly consistent. The use of chord, the A chord for red, pink, and scarlet seems to be consistent. Use of D chord for gray, green, and black seems to be somewhat consistent, mostly for black. Green, in my opinion, seems to have quite a bit of variability in it. So just really quick, I just want to point out that this C and the C is set green. So right there we have an A to a CG, and that's in jug band blues, and we're also discussing C and green, and the C is set green, right? But remember, we just went through another song that did a very similar thing in the song The Gnome. It says, a blue-green hood, it look quite good. So again, he's using blue-green and transitioning between a C and an A major this time. Not an A minor, but an A major. A blue-green hood, it look quite good. Very structurally similar in music-wise anyway, between those two songs, Jug Band Blues and The Gnome. And I just want to point out really quick, let me retune my guitar, and I'm going to try to show you something on this topic of synesthesia. Okay, so I just wanted to move to drop D tuning real quick. And again, I'm new to guitar, okay? I'm really new to guitar. I've only been messing with this for a little while. So I would like to consider, or like you to consider, that you already have a sensation for this, although you might not know it. Now these three chords of A minor, G, and D D are in the introduction to Alice in Chains' Down in a Hole. And they just kind of repeat this. They really hit you with it a lot. Over and over again, over and over again. They hit you with these three chords, very common chords. And just like Syd Barrett uses in Astronomy Domine, they shift from a D to a D minor, and it's very bright. Almost everyone can hear that transition, and I'll kind of show it to you where he sings down in a hole. Just listen to the transition from the introductory three chords of A minor, G, and D into a D minor, a C, and a G. Okay? And you tell me, where do you hear the brightness in this song? For me, anyway, the brightness in this song is in the transition from the D to the D minor. And that really rings out to me for some reason. I don't know what to call that, but if you wanted to call that the color green, I wouldn't disagree with you. So that's pretty much it for this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. You decide. Do you think there's something going on there with organization of chords and notes and colors with Mr. Barrett or not? I personally think it's possible. I don't know, and perhaps someone more musically capable than I can go through these and kind of really tear them apart and decide on their own. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like this done before. I thought it would be kind of fun, and I thought I would share it with you, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Now, one of the sad things, I think, is that we'll never know the answer to this question. It's just kind of a fun question to go through, and in a way, I think it's worth discussing internally, because if you are interested in music, then it's something that can perhaps help expand your own personal experience with music and even your own generation of music. Now, this will explain to you, of course this can't be known, and if it was something that would be known, perhaps it was in Mr. Barrett's books, and he burned quite a few of his notebooks. Now, if you realized at the beginning of this, I started with a quote, and for a long time this quote bothered me. Here lies one whose name was written in water. Now, we know that Mr. Barrett liked Keats because there were notes in books that he made of certain lines from Keats' poems. Keats is the romantic poet, not a. He is the romantic poet. And the key to his romance is in that singular line, here lies one whose name was written in water. I've considered that for quite some time, and I've heard a lot of people say that essentially what he's saying is that, I guess he's trying to say two separate things, in most people's opinion. One is that he's kind of temporary and disappearing, and second, that that's kind of a negative thing. I'd like to point out that there's another way of looking at this, specifically for a romance poet, which is that water is tied to emotion, and romantic poets are supposed to give themselves over to emotion. They're meant to experience the totality of emotion, and in doing so, devote their life and their art to emotion. And that emotion can be the beauty and full experience and awe of love, and the complete and utter grief tied to depression. Those are all tied to the same idea of being alive and experiencing your own life, being in tune with who you are and what's happening in your own experience, being not necessarily completely caught up in the ecstatic nature of love or completely destroyed by the destruction of grief, but still to fully experience them and acknowledge that those things are happening and that is a part of life. And because of grief, we are able to recognize the beauty of love. And because of this, the salvationary nature of love, we are able to overcome grief. The potential of love saves us from desperation. And the nature of absolute grief is what makes us respect that love even more, the uniqueness of that love. Now, let's look again at the quote. Here lies one whose name was written in water. This would mean, therefore, that this poet, this romance poet, is specifically stating that his name or his life was written with emotion, which makes sense, doesn't it? This can be kind of caught up in and stated in his letters to Fanny, who was his love. He stated specifically the following: "Love is my religion. I could die for that. I could die for you. I have left no immortal work behind me, nothing to make my friends proud of my memory. But I have loved the principle of beauty in all things. And if I had had time, I would have made myself remembered." So in this way, I think Mr. Keats is stating two separate things, a kind of a sadness and a temporary or ephemeral nature to life, but also the idea that he has dedicated himself to love and to being alive, to being human. And in that way, he is not only the romance poet, but he's also an artist. And in being an artist, he's a human being. A full human being. That's pretty much it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will talk to you later.